Hi ECU students, welcome to week 15 of Accounting 222. This week we're looking at the budgeting process. So we're going to define what budgeting is and describe how it relates to two important concepts of comparability and understandability. Those are big words that are just, I'll explain them in a minute, pretty easy to get actually. We're also going to look at identifying the elements of what's called a master budget. Not every organization has a master budget per se, but I think you'll recognize the concept pretty quickly. And then we're going to look at preparing the operating budgets that support that master budget, and also related to those operating budgets, the financial documents that you're already used to seeing, those income and balance sheet statements and cash flow statements associated with each of those budgets. And then we're also going to look at the importance of why we even do a budget and why it's important in the management process. So the idea of comparability is pretty simple. It's the idea of presenting information in a way so that you can compare two different time periods. If you've handled budgets at all in your organization, you know what I'm talking about. You would compare like the month of the first quarter to the second quarter, but the information has to be presented in a way that you can do an A to B comparison for each quarter so you can see how you're doing. That's the idea of comparability. So the information is presented in a way that you can easily compare year over year, quarter over quarter, month over month information. Understandability. It's the idea that information must make sense. I know that sounds pretty obvious, right? Captain Obvious here, but it's got to make sense to decision makers. So numbers shouldn't be presented in a way that it's like cloaking out or masking out important information. And oftentimes as decision makers, you're going to figure out, hey, I need this number presented a different way than I'm seeing it. And you talk to the accounting folks, excuse me, and they can often write a different report for you. We do that all the time in our business. We develop different reports that show different features of our revenue or expenses that are not normally in a standard report. So the idea of understandability is making sure information is presented to decision makers in a way that they can make decisions from because it makes sense. Budgeting. Real kind of a 20,000 foot overview in terms of the definition. And remember, budgeting is not a document, it's a process. So the outcome is a document, but the actual budgeting is a process to get to the outcome of a document. But it's the process of identifying and gathering and summarizing information, financial information for your company. And keep in mind that budgets represent the cost to execute strategies or the cost to execute plans. It's not a big deal to put a plan together. It's a bigger deal to put the cost together to execute it. Budgets represent strategies and values of the company. Your budget should look like and emphasize the things that are important to you as managers and decision makers. Again, the master budget is just a collection of all of these operating budgets that we're going to hit real quick here and their financial documents. A master budget is made up, for example, of sales budgets, production budgets, purchasing budgets, labor, overhead. Excuse me. And the sales budget is prepared first. And you guess why? Because it generates the revenue. The sales budget includes the forecast for revenue, projection, sales. And from that, you can produce all the other operating budgets. Revenue drives everything. This is an example, in a manufacturing organization at least, of how budgeting would work and how that process looks. Again, the sales budget drives everything. It drives the production budget. The production budget is actually made up of materials, labor, and then overhead, what it takes to run the equipment. All three of these, actually these four, generate what's called the cost of goods budget, which generate a cost of goods of sales budget. So it's actually kind of like a profit margin. It's cost of goods, often called COGS, cost of goods. And in parallel to that, the sales budget drives what's called the SG&A budget, or selling and general administrative expenses budget. So there's cost of goods and there's SG&A. From that, these financial documents are the ones you're used to that you're used to already seeing. There's the P&L statement, there's cash flow, there's the balance sheet, and then there's also this capital expenditures budget, which is the budget for buying equipment, major purchases, and that sort of thing. So always, whenever you're doing a budget, you think about the operating budget, And then month to month, you use these financial budgets to compare how you're doing. This would be an example of how it works for a retail organization. This would be an example of how it works for a typical service organization. Again, this is going to differ based on whatever service you're providing. But the general idea is revenue drives everything. So budgets are essential to accomplishing the organization's mission, their strategy, and their budgets are really a great communication tool. The act of the process, or the act of going through the process of creating a budget, forces people to talk about what's important, and you have to make decisions about where you're going to spend your money. So budgeting in itself is the process. The outcome is great communication and accomplishment of your plans as well. Some of the advantages: it fosters good communication, like I just said. It ensures that you're going to accomplish, at least fund, future events, so you won't have like an unfunded mandate or an unfunded strategy that's hanging out there. And it helps you resolve day-to-day issues. It also gives you some direction on how to assign resources, where to put people, what projects to put people on. And during the budgeting process, you also identify constraints. Things that are going to go awry, things that might not work well. You identify those up front, bottlenecks, if you will, during the budgeting process. And then finally, a great thing that budgeting does is allows people to have a voice at the table about what's important. So individuals who are participating in the budget, this is not put together just by the decision makers. I would encourage, whenever you're doing a budget, pull in as many people as you can to do that. People who are at the ground level of the organization should have a voice in what the budget looks like. Gives them, if you will, a seat at the table. And then they also play a role in managing it, because now they own part of it. Remember, if you develop a budget and just give it to somebody, they don't own it. They're just receiving it, and they have to, they don't feel like they had a voice in it. So if you let them have a voice in it and let them have a seat at the table when you put it together, they also then take ownership of it. Okay, this is usually just kind of like a 20,000 foot view of the management process of planning, planning the budget, evaluating things as you go month to month, using the ideas comparability, for example, to make sure you can compare month to month, quarter to quarter, and then communicating results. All right, listen, we're coming down to the home stretch. Don't start coasting yet. We're in week 15, one more week to go after this. Give me a shout if you need some help on something. Have a great week.